grooming is a huge issue in today's society, and it's a fear that's growing amongst the Sikh community, the feel that they're being targeted. What are you going to do to ensure that our children are safe?
Well, I agree with you that it's an enormous concern, and the trend that you talk about of an increasing concern is something I think we all need to be worried about. So we have to be absolutely clear that this cannot be tolerated, and to take very tough action against anyone who is responsible for grooming, to send a very clear message out that this is an outrage, that children must be safe, and this applies to the Sikh community as much as to any other part of our diverse communities.
What are you doing to help victims of grooming? Because a lot of people, when they come forward, it's hard for them to come forward. Then they feel like there's nowhere to go once they've come forward. They don't have that support around them.
Well, one of the things I've argued for is that there must be access to mental health support. Often youngsters have gone through the most awful trauma, and it's really important that they get access to support and help at that moment of need, rather than having to wait a long time. And one of the things that I've campaigned for in my role as minister is equality in mental health, so that people's mental health needs are treated as seriously as any physical health need, and that's particularly important with cases of grooming.
You mentioned mental health there. There's talks as well that mental health isn't taken seriously in the NHS. A waiting time for an appointment with depression can be up to 6 weeks. Why is mental health not taken seriously?
In my view, there's a discrimination at the heart of the NHS which has to end, and the Liberal Democrats are leading the case for ending that discrimination. So to give you an example, you talk about waiting times. In the last decade, the previous Labour government introduced maximum waiting times in the NHS, and they were right to do so. People were waiting far too long for operations, but they left out mental health. And there is no possible justification for this. If you have suspected cancer, your GP will refer you to a specialist, and you have a right to see them within 2 weeks. But if you have a serious mental health problem, you have no such right. That's outright discrimination. So we have introduced the first ever waiting time standards in mental health from this month, but I want to see them comprehensively across mental health, so that anyone suffering from depression or anxiety, or perhaps conditions like obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar, get access to treatment on a timely basis as a right, in exactly the same way as someone suffering from cancer or from heart disease or any other physical health condition.
But in general, waiting times have grown substantially in this government as well. Why has nothing changed? We were promised that waiting times would be decreased and it would change. Why has it not changed with this government?
So the NHS has been under a lot of pressure, and it's growing pressure. We're all living longer, which is a very positive thing, but many people living with chronic conditions and living for many years with those conditions, and often a mixture of physical and mental health problems. So the NHS needs extra investment, and the Liberal Democrats are the only party that has come forward to say where the money's coming from. We've committed to the £8 billion that all of the experts say will be needed by 2020. No other party has made the commitment and demonstrated where the money's going to come from. And now I want all of the parties, as soon as we're through this election, to come together in a non-partisan commission. People don't want the NHS used as a political football. They want to see a good, strong, sustainable NHS. We need to come together in a commission to engage with the public, with clinicians, with patient groups, to achieve a new settlement for the NHS and for care, so that we can all be sure it will be there when we need it.
Where will the money go in the NHS? Because staffing is a huge problem. Staff are overworked, understaffed, and cuts have led to making this worse. So where are we going to put the money?
Well, the money will be needed for staff, but we've been talking to GPs today who talk to us about where we can use money more effectively as well. So we need both the extra investment, which the Liberal Democrats have committed to, but we also need to improve the way in which we use the money to make sure it's used efficiently, to ensure that people get help when they need it, and to ensure that there are sufficient staff available to deal with those mounting range of problems that people come to the NHS with.
Will cuts in immigration affect staffing the NHS?
Well, look, as a Liberal Democrat, I absolutely recognise the enormous role that people coming to this country play in benefiting our economy, but also in sustaining our NHS and our care system. And the NHS and the care system would collapse without those people who've come to this country to work in it. And we need to celebrate that and be grateful for people coming and making that commitment to this country rather than denigrating them.
Okay, and finally, in this general election, how important is the Sikh vote?
It's really important. Sikhs living in this country are equal citizens with anyone else, and that is a fundamental principle as a liberal that I believe in. And so we have to reach out to the Sikh community to convince them that voting Liberal Democrat is the right way to vote. And our central message is that we need to sort out public finances. We need to get that in order. We can't pass on debt, unsustainable debt to future generations, but critically we need to do it fairly. So we wouldn't cut as much as the Conservatives would do, and we won't borrow as much as Labour, but we will make sure we make the investment in our public services, in the NHS and in the education system, but also ensure that we get public finances under control.
But if we're not going to borrow money or cut money, where's the money going to come from?
So we say that there has to be some extra contribution from those with the broadest shoulders. The very wealthiest in our society, we believe, need to make a bit more of a contribution, and we struggle to accept the Conservative position that the very wealthy should not pay a single penny more. And the Conservatives propose, as part of their plan, £12 billion of cuts in working age benefits without giving any detail at all about where those cuts are going to fall. We don't think that that's acceptable, and we don't think it's fair that the clearing of the deficit has to be done in a fair way. So there will be some cuts, there will be further cuts that we have to make, and we've recognised that completely. We will maintain that discipline, but also those with the broadest shoulders, the wealthiest in our society, must pay their fair share as well.